This is Tennessee Talks with United States Congressman Tim Burchett.
Hello, I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and welcome back to another episode of Tennessee Talks. Today, I'm pleased to be joined with my good friend Rich Powell, the Chief Executive Officer, or CEO, as we say in East Tennessee, of ClearPath and ClearPath Action. And these organizations work with folks in the public and private sectors to promote policies that will advance clean energy innovation and strengthen our country's economy. Rich's work has been published in dozens of news outlets, such as the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, and the New York Times. And of course, now you can add Tennessee Talks to that list. I'm sure it'll be on your resume tomorrow. He also frequently testifies before Congress on climate change and energy innovation. Rich, I want to thank you for joining me here today, brother.
Hey.
It's good to have you. I've got a few questions to ask you. They'll be hard hitting, and I'm sure you'll sweat and stutter as we go through them. What is ClearPath's general approach to clean energy?
Well, first, thank you for having me, and thank you for everything you're doing on this front around kind of energy innovation, clean energy. It's incredibly important. So, our approach to this issue is there is just an incredible amount of dynamic innovation coming from the American private sector, from our innovators, and from incredible places like the national laboratories, which I know are near and dear to your heart.
Oak Ridge, sure.
And been so important to the American energy economy. And we really see the clean energy opportunity as one that can be so important to improving American economic competitiveness, to pushing back against China and Russia, making us a more competitive economy around the world. And to reducing emissions, but doing it in a way that makes clean energy cheaper. The focus on making clean energy cheaper, not traditional energy more expensive, right?
Right.
And we think if you can do all of that, innovation is the key to that, and developing these new technologies is the key to that. I mean, think about what we did with nuclear energy in this country,
Or nuclear.
Nuclear in this country.
Either one.
We invented that technology, right? Tennessee invented that technology, and a couple other states were involved as well, but mostly Tennessee, right? And
we like to think so.
That became, in the course of a couple of years, 20% of the national power supply, some of the most affordable energy in the country, certainly the cleanest energy in the country, no emissions from any perspective. And it's also, it's been a bedrock of the communities that it's been in, and it's really helped to improve our competitiveness. And so, our thought is, well, how can we go a lot further with nuclear, and then how can we go and take that same kind of...
I was kidding.
What's that?
You can say nuclear.
I'm happy either way.
I'm just kidding. No, I always say that. That's why I ask the nukes folks, so which is it? And then they go, I'll look around. I'm just kidding, dude. I know how to say it. Well, let me ask you this then. Why do you push... many types of clean energy out there? It just seems like I always get these folks say, well, why don't you just push wind and solar?
Yeah.
And
100% we can do it all with wind and solar. 100% wind and solar.
The wind doesn't blow enough. In East Tennessee, we've got a couple of windmills. I believe they're up on a hill and going into Oak Ridge, oddly enough, or Oliver Springs down that way. And I was told the other day, I think they're taking them down. You only have a couple of months a year that the wind actually blows enough to where they actually generate electricity. And of course, solar. I was county mayor, and everybody would come in and say, "Oh, we need to do solar on all these rooftops," and then the government will buy it back. But our return on the investment, ROI, as people like you would say, but in East Tennessee would say, how much are we going to get off those? And it would be, sometimes it was around like 1%. Yeah. And then if you take into inflation or bird strikes or a hailstorm, and then you're underwater. Yeah. And it's just not the panacea, so to speak. And it's a good thing. You've got a hillside that can't be used, and and it's not that slice of that pie. One of those slivers is always, I think, going to be solar. But we really haven't had any innovation in solar in probably the last 30 years. Yeah. Any major innovation?
Look, we should have a portfolio, right, with all of the different, technologies represented. Wind and solar can be really good technologies, right? If you got
Sure.
let's say you're in eastern Colorado, right? I mean, you got just continuous wind, right? Wind makes a ton of sense there, in Wyoming and a lot of other places. Or you're in Arizona, right? Solar makes all the sense in the world in Arizona, right? And really no one technology can ever be the only thing. I mean, you wouldn't want a grid even that was 100% nuclear powered, right?
Sure.
Because, what if you had an issue with the fuel supply or something? You want a diverse portfolio of things. Ideally, you want that portfolio to be as clean as possible, right? And so wind and solar can play a role. They absolutely can't be 100% of the grid, as many folks claim. That leads to all kinds of problems with affordability of your grid and reliability of your
Now,
grid.
France, the picture of conservatism, which it is not. I believe are they what 80%
80% nuclear.
nuke?
80%.
80% nuke. All those lights at the
Yeah.
City of Lights, and it's nuclear, and I think that's pretty cool. And of course the small nuclear reactors, I think when they come on, we're going to be. I would wish the nuclear regulatory agencies would get off their butts and start moving that permitting process along. I realize it's a volatile situation, but I think we've played that over so many times that it's just ridiculous. I can remember in East Tennessee they were building nuclear reactors, and their kids were working on that same reactor just because of all the delays.
Yeah.
The fathers would start, and the kids would still be. Another area I'm concerned about, and I've been interested in dealt with proposed legislation actually, is on carbon capture, and I'm wondering what that process looks like now and what you see it looking like in the future.
Yeah, so it's a really exciting prospect. The first thing to know is it works, right? Like around the world today, we capture 40 million tons of CO2 every year. The U.S. is one of the largest places in the world that does that. We actually already move carbon around in pipelines in this country. There's 5,000 miles of CO2 pipelines already in this country. In some places, carbon.
I didn't realize it was that much.
It's that much, right? Yeah. In some places, carbon dioxide is so valuable. And think about it. I mean, it's in our Coke, right? Like, anything you drink with bubbles in it, that's CO2. That's CO2, and that came from somewhere. We actually drill for it. It's that valuable in many parts of the country. There's a market to buy it, to put back into old, like long-used oil and gas wells to
regenerate, repressurize, and pull the oil out. Yeah.
So when you think about that, we got a market for this gas. That's basically industrial gas. We've got all these power plants that are burning stuff, and they're producing a lot of that. So why don't we find ways to better set up that market so we can capture more of that, whether that's from a coal-fired power plant, a gas power plant, an industrial facility, cement factory, steel mill, something like that, and capture it, get it to the places where it can be used, ideally. We think that that's a really important technology. And, if you're just focused on clean, right, if you're just focused on lowering emissions, all the models or projections that say we could actually get to a zero emission future, they all say we would have to do a ton of this carbon capture. And we'd have to do it on lots of petrochemical plants and cement plants and steel plants and all that sort of stuff. It can be a really exciting technology. I mean, today we basically have stuff that you can bolt on to the existing plant. So think like rather than letting your smokestack go up, it effectively goes underground. That's today's technology. And then there's future technology that are going to be whole redesigned plants that sort of take that carbon capture into account. So one of the ones that we're most excited about, these guys down in North Carolina have redesigned what a gas plant looks like. And it's basically a gas plant that has zero emissions. It never has a smokestack in the first place. It's designed for the only thing to come out of the plant to be CO2. It's called Net Power. They've built a first one of these in Texas. They're going to build 2 more soon in Illinois and in Colorado. They've got interest from all over the world. And it seems like they're going to be able to do it at the same price as a normal gas plant. And at that point, it's like, well, I mean, if you could build a new gas plant at the same price as an existing gas plant that doesn't have any emissions, why wouldn't we just do that, right? Why wouldn't we capture those emissions, remove those pollutants, and then, and then obviously do something good with the CO2 if we can, right?
Well, ideally, I guess, capitalism will be what will solve most of these problems. Somebody's going to figure it out and figure out how to turn a dime on it. I had a guy tell me one time, he said, you want to stop pollution. He said, make all the smokestacks. They can't be higher than 10 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Because
that'd fix it. That's one way.
Except in China, they don't care. It's going to be open pit burning out there. They don't care. They're awful. What do you think that Congress can do to fix the federal permit process so that these private sector energy innovations can thrive? Congress has a bad habit of going in and saying, and the big boys in government will say, they'll put it in somebody's ear, hey man, this is a horrible environmental issue, which it might be, and say we need to, or just scares people into thinking it is. Case in point, grease traps. I was the mayor of Knox County, and they said a couple of mom and pop restaurants downtown had gone out of business, and I called then Senator Lamar Alexander and said, this new rule that came through, which, it's in a huge rule packet and nobody knows. It basically said you've got to put these grease traps in all these mom and pop restaurants. Well, the big boys, McDonald's, they're, I like the quarter pounder with cheese, and especially since the guy came out against crime in Chicago, I'm back to eating a lot of McDonald's. I still wish they'd fix their ice cream machines, but McDonald's, it's a nickel on a thing of French fries for a weekend. But a mom and pop place, 50 grand's it put them out of business, and it put them out of business. Literally put them out of business because they didn't want so much grease. Because grease in the decomposition of sewer, it slows it down and it has a real noxious sulfur dioxide smell, which is like a rotten egg smell. So, but the point was,
you got deep on this grease trap.
Yeah, well, it fascinates me. All this stuff fascinates me, and so. It put them out of business, but it didn't put the big boys out of business. And so the big boys, they push these things to where the smaller. I mean, there's not a mom and pop nuclear energy supply, but with these small nuclear reactors, you're going to see maybe like a KUB, Knoxville Utility Board, somebody like that of that size could possibly, in the foreseeable future, have a small nuclear reactor. That operated under certain circumstances, and of course it's safety wise. To me, it's a much more much more safe instead of having all your eggs in one basket. Case in point, Japan, Fukushima, whatever. Or
Fukushima.
Fukushima. I'm sorry. Of course, they put the thing on a fault line too. And
they put the backup generators in the basement under the it was
it was a disaster.
Yeah, it was
very uncharacteristic of the Japanese, but they're very limited too on their small island country of where they could put that stuff. So anyway, back to the question: do you think what can Congress do to make this process a little better?
If you think about effectively all the ways that we have built up for our government to say no. We're not yet to virtually anything somebody wants to do, and then all of the ways that we have let individuals to come in and intervene via lawsuits in all of those things. It's really hard to build anything in this country anywhere at this point. A lot of it stems back from there's an act called NEPA, the National Environmental Policy Act, which you know well. That bill is 7 pages long, right? And that was passed before we had any other major environmental bills, before we had the Clean Air Act, before we had the Clean Water Act, before the Endangered Species Act. There's one bill. And this one bill, complying with this one bill, can delay a project by a decade or more. And you can't, whether you're a mom and pop, or frankly, whether you're huge, whether you're the Tennessee Valley Authority or something like that, you can't justify a project if it's going to have 10 years of permitting delay before you can even start putting steel on the ground. And that can really kill a lot of things. I think that the application of that has sort of run amok, both on the federal side, kind of what folks like the EPA do to administer the thing, and then all of the people that we now let to kind of intervene and sue to stop everything. So we need to find some way, especially if we're serious about building clean energy fast, whether that's new wind and solar, whether that's new nuclear, whether that's geothermal or the carbon capture pipelines, or whatever, big batteries, whatever you want to build. We're not, and let's not even get started about trying to actually get mining started again in this country and for critical minerals, and then processing that mining,
rare earth minerals,
all of that stuff. I mean, every one of these things will start with a permit, and if we don't find a way to get these things either to a yes or frankly even a no decision
to move
fast,
on.
right?
Sure.
To move on. You're not going to see any kind of big market-based transition to clean energy because government will have gotten in the way. And it's not, unfortunately, it's not just NEPA. We've got, as you said before, we've got the Nuclear Regulatory Commission making it very, very difficult to get a new reactor licensed. We've got FERC making it really difficult just to relicense like a dam, like a hydropower facility, just to keep it running. Right,
Sure.
that can take 10 years or more. So kind of really at every point.
You think when you got to redo your electrical wires in your house, you think that those codes are tough?
Yeah.
You got to pull the codes. When you pull the codes on the dam, I'd say
it's pretty serious. It's pretty serious.
Yeah.
So, the good news, I think, obviously this is something that you and, broadly conservatives have been talking about for a long time. I think the folks across the aisle are finally coming to some sanity on this, and some of them are admitting that we got a problem.
Right, it's election time.
Yeah,
so.
it's election. Yeah, so there's a lot of debate left and to get to a compromise on this, but I think that's possible. I think y'all might be able to get to something in the next Congress.
ORNL.
Knock on wood.
Yeah. Wood derivative there. I think. ORNL, Oak Ridge National Laboratory. They're good for the area, and it's good for national security.
Yeah.
And I wondered, states like California don't seem to share in our beliefs of those kind of things. I wonder at what point is the tipping point? Do we, I always joke about these states is when the last person leaves there, turn the lights off because, they just they're coming in droves to Tennessee. You go out in areas are Loudon, Lenore City, those areas, it's just, there's nobody who speaks with my accent. And the truth is, a lot of them are more conservative than I am. They've just left. They just said, we've given up. We're out.
Well,
Massachusetts, we're out. California, New York, we're out. So what do you think?
Yeah, unfortunately, we're in the midst of an energy crisis, right? So globally, that's got a lot to do with Putin and Ukraine.
Sure.
But domestically, folks also made a lot of really poor decisions kind of coming into this year, right? We slowed down domestic drilling and permitting.
Well, California's having a problem with the rolling energy
with
blackouts.
rolling blackouts, yeah. So California's got these really significant problems. California has been gradually shutting down a lot of its baseload energy. Obviously, the coal is long gone from California. They've shut down one of the two nuclear plants, and they were scheduled to shut down the other one. They've been shutting down a lot of the gas plants in California. A lot of the things that give them a lot of flexibility when these extreme weather events happen, heat waves happen, all this kind of stuff. We get more heat waves and all that. And you never want to let an energy crisis go to waste, and I think it is resetting some of the thinking there. They actually voted just last month, finally, this is years overdue, they finally voted to keep open the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant to try to preserve the grid in California. So it's got at least a couple years of reprieve. And that is so important, and I hope that other states that have had this misguided policy, I think it's too late for Germany and stuff.
Sure.
They're totally overboard. But
and they're going to, and we're afraid they're going to have a bad winter.
Yeah.
Pipeline and all that. It could be devastating for those.
If they have a tough winter in Europe, people are going to freeze. With gas 100%. Prices there this high, they have scraped up basically every spare unit of natural gas around the world. And still, if it looks like the Russians yesterday literally blew up, the Nord Stream 1. Literally blew up the Nord Stream pipeline, right, underwater. They're cracking down on the gas that's going through Ukraine. It could be really rough in Europe this winter, and it's because they made these. Let me tell you, they're all going to be really thankful for those French nuclear reactors that are still running, on that side of the continent and getting some electricity to the rest.
I'd say they're going to have to. This is part of the show that I hate and the most. Not that it's ending; it's that I allow you to ask a question of me.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you'd like to ask me?
I'm going to give you a softball, but I'm very interested in your answer to this. What is something really great about Tennessee that nobody outside of Tennessee
outside of me?
Yeah. Well, no, really outside of the state. Other than you. Other than you.
Okay.
Other than you. That's
see if you
one.
caught that or not.
Other than you. Yeah.
When I was mayor, I always had these consultants come in, and when these folks would come in for business, and they would bring in, they'd want to take them downtown, and they wanted to show them, whatever. But the reality is that our asset is our people. It's those guys and gals that they got their name on their shirt. They get up and get it every morning and look you in the eye, shake your hand, and tell you, "Dadgummit, I'm going to do this job for you. I'm going to do it." We had a group out of Utah that came in and built very fine plastics facility. They tables and everything else, and a very conservative Mormon folks, And I remember I was in the factory with him one time, and this guy's, I ride motorcycles, and this old biker guy, I knew he was working there, and he was talking to the guy, and he's just covered in tattoos, but he was there working, and he was shaking the guy's hand, and they were having just a very nice conversation. And I thought, if everybody could see that in the world, that those people, they get it, and they work hard, and they're wonderful folks. And that is our best asset that we have, is our people. And I think sometimes we forget that. We try to, they talk about when businesses come to town, businesses are in business to make money.
I've heard.
And, and they like our schools in East Tennessee, and they like God's beauty that He's given us. We got beautiful lakes, streams, and mountains, and all that, and wildlife. But when it comes down to it, it's the people. And I think, sometimes I think we forget that, and that's unfortunate. But anyway.
That's a good answer. That's a really good answer.
It's a true answer.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
Then I have to get to my closing point here, if that's all right.
Yeah.
Rich, I want to thank you for joining me today. And I want to thank the great work you do at ClearPath. You've been a real asset to us, and I appreciate it. And I want to thank you for all your hard work. And I'm Congressman Tim Burchett, and I want to thank y'all for listening to this episode of Tennessee Talks. Always, thank y'all for sending me here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Tennessee Talks. Please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Keep up with Congressman Burchett by following Rep. Tim Burchett on Twitter and Instagram, and Congressman Tim Burchett on Facebook and YouTube.